Welcome back to another episode of Outdoor Industry Executive Voices podcast. I am your host, Tony O'Neill, and today we have a guest who truly understands the value of authentic brand storytelling and building engaged communities. Meet Christian Lepley, a marketing maven with deep roots in various sectors, including the outdoor industry, endurance sports, nutrition, and even fashion. From crafting compelling narratives for GU Energy Labs to spearheading noteworthy footwear launches for the North Face, Christian's career is a testament to the power of a purpose-driven business model. He's got a keen eye for digital marketing, a strategic mind for go-to-market plans, and a heart that beats for the outdoors, quite literally given his love for running mountain trails and competing in races. So whether you're interested in brand development, digital strategy, or simply passionate about the outdoor industry, you're going to want to listen to this episode. Christian, welcome to the Outdoor Industry Executive Voices podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Christian, I am absolutely thrilled to have you on the show today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. So let's start where I prefer to start with every guest. And Christian, tell us about your entry point into the outdoor industry.
Professionally, it started when I was working at advertising agencies, a small agency in San Francisco, and one of our clients was the North Face. And at that time, I was brought on board to manage that account and bring some things to life, including their up-and-coming footwear launch. And I got so deeply into it personally and professionally, and realizing, oh, wow, this is an amazing category. I fell in love with them as a client. I fell in love with the category. In fact, at one point, it was hard to tell where I worked, which payroll I was on. I spent so much time at their offices at that time where it was in the Bay Area. And then eventually they moved out to Carbondale, Colorado. And I was just spending so much time with them, getting to know the product, the people, everything that they were about. That at that point, that lit the spark. When I had them as a client, did that for several years. And at that point, I realized that's a great industry. I need to stay attached to that industry. I didn't stay attached completely until, I took a hiatus and did some other things. But at that point, I realized that was something I really needed to dig into deeper. Because also personally at that time, I was heavily involved in mountaineering, climbing big peaks, doing all that stuff. So of course, that enhanced that, and they encouraged me and offered up a lot of opportunities for me at the time. So yeah, that was the moment where I had got my true introduction to it.
Interesting. So how long did you live in Carbondale for?
I didn't live there. I just spent a lot of time there.
Okay.
From the Bay Area, I traveled back and forth as much as I could. I found every excuse I could to go out for meetings, hang out there, spend weekends. And I do remember at one point there was a team member on the North Face side. They actually asked me, do you work here or do you work at the agency? And just because I just became so engrossed in what they were doing, that I really at that point realized, boy, their inspiration for the products is where marketing begins. Why are they doing these things? Not just at the finish line. Here it is. Help us position this and sell this, which was my experience at other agencies where you're given a product launch. Here it is. You don't really fully understand why it exists, but I was so into it personally. And then professionally, they were such great people to work with. And I was just inspired by the atmosphere and what they were doing, that it just became natural for me to spend more time there than, at my desk at the agency.
If I was in your shoes, I'd be trying to get out there as frequently as possible for all those reasons.
Yeah, not a bad gig. I mean, the Bay Area, it was easy when they were in San Leandro, but then of course, when they went out to Carbondale, that was a treat to make sure a lot of meetings were on Fridays and Mondays. So you had the weekend, there was all those things, and they encouraged it. And my agency, they're that's great. You're managing, it's your thing, own it. So it was perfect.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I want to jump into a little bit of your experience at GU Energy Labs. And something I was thinking about prior to our show is during your time at GU, Christian, what did you consider to be your key marketing objective or goal in that time period?
Yeah, great question. It was really kind of orbited around this, finding that magical intersection between brand purpose and commercial success. Finding that point where those two things enhance each other, how to harmonize those two goals. That was really my main objective, being head of marketing there, because, you want to grow and thrive as a company financially so you can do good things in the community. But also GU has such a deep, rich history in community building and authenticity, and it grew slowly. The founder still runs the company. It's family owned. All those things were very important. And those are the things that made it different. but also we wanted to be financially viable and grow sustainably throughout, my time there. So that's really what I worked hard on, is making sure any growth initiatives that we put forward had that balance between brand purpose and then also achieved a commercial success that was appropriate for what we were doing. So that was really the magic of it, because it would be easy to just, create a distribution plan or encourage a distribution plan that did nothing but grow, but didn't do much for your brand purpose. So we were always, teased by some of those opportunities. We always put it through that filter is, first brand purpose, is it supporting that? And then does it have a commercial return for us? So it was really about doing both of those things, because brand purpose and creating brand purpose, or, communicating brand purpose, which then drives brand desire, will fuel growth. So it's not as though if you focus 100% of your time on brand purpose work and that kind of messaging and those kinds of campaigns, you're still supporting growth. It might not be sales today, but it certainly is revenue tomorrow, because you're building that brand desire, which we all know fuels growth. So it was always about, that sustainable growth, but really through that filter of purpose. So finding that harmonization was really important for our team.
That's very interesting. A mature company, founder-led, still being founder-led. Did you know that when you first walked into this role? Did you know that he was going to be still very focused on brand and looking at brand leads to commercialization? Or is that something that you came in and uncovered? It's very interesting to hear a company that size really believe that the brand is where it starts.
Yeah, I knew that going into it. They specifically brought me on board because of my storytelling background. I think it was actually in the job spec. We need a storyteller, a brand storyteller. And the founder owner, it's his heart that's reflected in the brand. And he was very much a storyteller and very much about the community and all that. So, it was a very specific, a very deliberate hire, and it was very deliberately hired me because of my background with other brands, doing that, focusing on that. And then knowing that, of course, that has to turn into something, because we want to stay in business so we can keep supporting the community and doing all these great things. So it was a very deliberate partnership between myself and Goo.
That's very interesting. And the fact that Goo is still owned by the founder, where, Cliff, Power Bar, they've all sold and now are giant entities, and to remain still independently operated and owned. I think there's definitely something very special in that in our industry.
Yeah. The founder, it's owned by the son of the founder, and the son was there a part of it. So he's a co-founder. And so, they just kind of carries that family ethos, that family inspiration all the way through. And he's still very much involved, and brings people on that really understand that and can onboard that heart that he brings to it and what we're there for. The idea we were there to feed movement and feed that need to move, and really was about knowing that movement, is the main ingredient for a great life. And so it was more than just sports nutrition. It was about a whole ethos, a whole lifestyle. So it was important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back a little bit further into your past, you'd shared this with me a while back, but I know that you managed a significant footwear launch for the North Face in conjunction making a documentary or a film series that for NBC Sports, which supporting the brand, and created really all the digital film series for another brand, which is Levi's, to help announce a new product line there. This is something I'm creating content right now, so I'm very interested in this. Is what's your secret sauce, or what is the secret sauce to creating a buzzworthy launch?
Oh yeah, interesting question, because content is king now. Or queen. It's just like, it is what everybody is talking about. And what makes something buzzworthy? In some ways, we don't know. In some ways, it's magic. We don't really know. However, my philosophy, how I approach it, is with content and with messaging, there's feel and there's do. There's a feeling that you can get from a piece of content, and there's asking people to do something. And my belief is, if you want to create buzzworthy content, something that's going to maybe have a life on its own, focus on the feel. What is the feeling you want people to get from this? What is that story you're telling them? What do you want them to imagine? Don't sell them a product. Sell them a feeling. Communicate a feeling. Tell a story. Fuel their imaginations with the thing. The do will come later. And the do will be on their own. They'll understand that, consumers and communities understand that you're a brand, understand that you're selling things, and they want to know more about that, but in their own context. So buzzworthy content to me really focuses on that feeling that you're creating with the story and with what you're doing. And then also empathetic use of media, making sure that you know your community, where they consume media, how they like to consume media, because there are a lot of choices and it changes week over week, feels like. So it's really important to have empathy for the community, where they consume media, what's on their minds, and really just tell a story and create a feeling, create an emotion.
The emotion, we have, as humans, we have a multitude of emotions, right? Depending on what the moon's doing, what the business is doing, what's going on with our family, right? We have all these emotions in every aspect of our life.
Yeah.
What emotion, when you're creating the buzz and you're creating the brand that gets people excited, can you narrow it down to what are the top, what's the top emotion or the top two emotions that, as a content creator who is building a brand and telling a story, what emotions are the most powerful?
Yeah. It's what's on the minds of our community. There's two things that I like to look at. One is, first of all, and I took this out of the playbook from our PR partner, is look what's going on in the world. Look what's going on in the news. First of all, because you don't want to be tone deaf to things that might be happening, especially in today's world. There's so many dramatic things that impact people's perception as what they should be doing with their time and money and energies. So make sure you understand that. So whatever it is you're doing is not tone deaf. And then it's actually data. It's information. Talk to your consumers, understand what moves them, what stories they want to hear, what's in their hearts, what's in their minds. So it's not something that we make up in-house. It is what comes from them. So it's really a function of data, and it's qualitative for the most part. It doesn't have to be a lot of, quantitative deep dives. It's really just having a relationship with your community and understanding what's important to them and what they want to hear and what's on their minds at that time of their lives. And that will inform your creative brief. And then you layer on what's going on in the world, making sure that you're on point in terms of not, being sensitive to things that might be happening. And it's those two things that drive the origins of a creative brief and what the content will become and what it will say.
Right now, there's a lot of things going on in the world. There's a lot of good things and there's also a lot of bad things. And as you create this brief to put together, when you have so many things that are going on, we'll just say right now, right? A lot going on. How do you dodge or avoid or not become tone deaf when there's so many? It's almost like the old video game Pitfall, right? Where you've got the guy who's running, he's got these pits. You got to get over the pits. There's a lot of pitfalls right now.
Yeah.
How would you plan something at a time like today, right now?
Yeah. Interesting question, because that is a challenge. And I think, and we experienced this, I experienced this at Goo specifically, actually. I recall, pre-pandemic, it was during some protests that were happening, and things that were going on in the communities. And it came down to us deciding, what do we believe in? Because you're not going to please everybody. If you try to please everyone, that's the pitfall. That's the pit that you fall into, is when you try to please everyone. So it comes from, who are you? And have the courage to be who you are. First, acknowledge if it is something that just doesn't make sense to talk about right now, then you avoid it. But if you're like, it is important, but we also know there's a certain segment that might not appreciate what we're saying or might have a reaction to what we're saying. If it's what you believe in your heart as a brand, and if it's that kind of brand, the North Face is that kind of brand, Goo is that kind of brand, these brands have a heart, then you go with that. You go with your heart, because that you can't be wrong if you are who you just be yourself, and then everything will be okay. But just be aware that there might be some folks out there that might not appreciate or have a reaction to what you're saying. But if it's true to yourself, true to the brand, then it's the right thing to do. So that's the final check. Because again, if you try to go through the process, let's avoid everything, you will make a mistake. It's not real.
I love that. So follow your heart, right? Follow what your conviction is right now. And most of our convictions, the reality of them is that they're altruistic, right? You have the commercialization part of it. Yeah. But as a brand in the outdoor industry and other industries for that matter, that if we follow what we truly believe and what's in our heart, that's how we mitigate a significant amount of pitfalls that have, over the past 3 years, I don't know if this is the time period we end with, because we have so much access to so much content, media, and things are coming at us from every direction. I tend to think we really are just in a very interesting time with the pitfalls. But simultaneously, I think we're in also the most amazing time ever to be alive from a technology standpoint, from the amount of resources that we have, and the things that are changing so rapidly right now in fundamental businesses across the globe. And my business, your business, it's all changing fast right now.
Yeah.
And if we put our sails up, like we can catch that wind, and it's that gets me excited like every single day.
Yeah, I mean, I would add that, and I remember I've given this advice to young candidates interviewing for a position. They said, what should I do? I said, just be yourself. If you feel in your heart, you know who you are, and you believe in who you are, and you trust yourself, it can't be wrong. If it doesn't work out for you this time, that's okay. Then it wasn't meant to be. But just be yourself. And it kind of frustrates me to watch the news when I see politicians that, in the political arena, they don't do this. They're trying to navigate these waters where there's just all of these, they feel they're predators. Be yourself. If you lose your job, well, you did the right thing. But, so I don't see it in that arena, but in our world, it's really important because at the end of the day, it can't be wrong. Even if there is a bit of a dip after and you're feeling the pressure, you will come back because you were honest and you're true to your heart, and that will always win out in the end.
Couldn't agree more that being authentic from the start is really what sets you in, whether it's an opportunity or a new friendship or a new romantic relationship.
Yeah.
That's what sets you up for long-term success, right? We can get short-term gains by pretending or faking it till we make it. Maybe that's not the right way to think about it, but it's being authentic, I think, is absolutely critical, and even more so in our industry, because it really is about following your heart and authenticity. And the younger generations, there is no question in my mind that they can sniff out authenticity faster than we ever could.
Yeah.
And that is
absolutely.
That's like a paradigm shift in the world of marketing.
And there's another audience here that's really important, that's vital, is the internal audience, the employees at the brand. If they see the brand doing that, then they're going to believe in their mission and what and why they work there and why they want to continue to work there. So I've seen it work the opposite of that, where they see you stumble as a leader or the brand stumble, and they're like, well, what do we stand for? So there is that audience as well. You have your community that supports you from a product standpoint and from a revenue standpoint. Then it's your team, your community in-house. They are as important, if not more important, because without them, you don't exist. Without their talents and without their support and without their enthusiasm, you don't have much going on. So it's really important that they see that as well. And they understand that you did what was right. We're taking some heat, or maybe we're not. Maybe everybody loved it. The more they see that, the stronger that community will be as well.
I'm having this conversation more frequently with some of the CEOs and GMs that I'm working with about exactly that, because we all know that culture is driven top down, but it goes way deeper than that. And that leader, whether it's a leader of a team or the leader of the organization, the more real and authentic that they are, and that includes showing vulnerability, that is what energizes a team to believe in that person. And I know over my career, I've had a few different leaders that I've worked for that I would literally walk over hot coals for. And this wasn't the super polished, you only get one response, everything is always the same in their world. They're real people that they go through, they have ups and downs, they have things that happen in their lives, and they have bosses. And that is something I think that is critical to driving a really positive, productive culture, is that leader who is willing to be authentic.
Yeah, it's really important for the leader also to ask the team, hey, here, how do we feel about this thing that's happening in the world? Do we want to talk about this? Do we want to avoid this? And they really appreciate that, because especially, if you have a strong team, they're made up of your consumer base in some way, and they're going to push back, and they know what's going on out there, and they know what's important. And so they're not only a teammate, they're also a consumer. And they're going to have that point of view that's really strong, because in the leadership position, especially, you're seeing things from a different view, and you need them to help you stay real and stay, feet on the ground. And it also builds, like you said, it builds a strong atmosphere and culture with the team that they can trust the leader. You're in it together. We're all on the same page, and that person doesn't have all the answers. They can't. That would be disingenuous if you knew everything.
Completely disingenuous. So you've got experience on both brand side and the agency side. And that's something that I feel like a lot of times in the searches that we work on, whether it's a director of marketing or a CMO, there's two categories, but people that have crossed into both and then ultimately to the brand side, I feel like most of the time when we're on a search, our customers will want us to find someone who has brand experience, but you had the experience on the agency side, but now been involved with brands, I think longer than the agency. In your perspective, what's changed about brand development and marketing strategy over the years, and particularly in our space, in the outdoor and endurance sports?
Yeah, I mean, I feel fortunate that I did start in the agency world because it honed my craft for storytelling and understanding media, and just creative briefs and things of that nature. I think it was really important, and it was a lot of fun. Great place to work as a young person, to work at a vibrant ad agency on a large international account. There's a lot of fun and there's a lot of opportunity. So I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, I think it was a great start. But as I started to move up in my career and then started to work in-house at brands, I did realize that there's a bit of and back when I started agencies, you were given a brief by a client. You didn't really fully understand the big picture, the inspiration for the product. What problem is that product solving for consumers? What job is it doing for the consumer? Sometimes you did and sometimes you didn't. It was kind of a hit or miss. It just really depends. But you really were in you're in sort of in the dark on a lot of things, in terms of even like things like the margin, like what does it do for the company? What's the goal for what is the real like long-term, prospects for this product line or this new product within a line, product line extension, whatever it may be. So you felt like you were in the dark. Your job was to focus on storytelling, creativity, creating a spark, creating energy, getting eyeballs, all those things. But there was so much that you didn't know. And so I think that's changing. And then when I migrated over to the brand side, I because I've experienced that, I make sure that that we inform the agency partners as much as we can about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and bring them along on the journey. I think that agencies nowadays more and more are involved. And I think that's the secret sauce to being successful, is really understanding why the brand is doing what it's doing. That I've had conversations with years ago. I remember with another sports nutrition brand, a very large one. I asked them, why don't you hire agencies? And she had said, well, and I was at one of their events, their employee events, and she said, look around at all of this culture. We could not find an agency that would understand this, that would be able to onboard this and get this emotion. And then I thought, well, why aren't they here? They should be here. Maybe they would. But I got her point that there's just this separation. So I think those walls are starting to break down, because otherwise agencies cannot be successful if they're not in-house, in a way, mentally and emotionally. And so I think that helped me understand that, with my journey. But I think also I believe it is changing, because I think it has been seen that you can't keep the agency in the dark. Either they're on the team or they're not. They are a member of the marketing team. Instead of hiring an in-house PR agency or ad agency, you are, outsourcing it, but they're on the team. Mm-hmm. They're on the org chart.
Something without having that experience myself, something that I've been curious about has been someone in an agency that gets to work on multiple brands. Say they're really cool brands, very authentic or very well-known and well-respected brands. It's not infrequent that someone from an agency will reach out to us here at Highline Outdoor Group and tell us that they want to get to the brand side. And I'm curious, because you made the transition, and it seems like it's been a very good transition for you and the brands that you have been part of. What is the pain that someone inside the agency is feeling? Because from the outside, they're working with, just totally, for example, Oakley, North Face, Patagonia. You've got these brands, but they want to go now and work specifically and exclusively with one brand. What's the pain that they're feeling on the inside of that agency? Why they want to then become singular in their brand focus?
Part of it is job security. Agency life is, you're there as long as your client is there. And so there's a lot of insecurity in terms of, and a lot of turnover, and some people like that excitement because you're pitching new business, you're working on existing business, you're doing all these things. And it's great because you learn about all these industries. It's just a great learning atmosphere for a young person to, because I worked on technology, automotive, spirits, fashion, all these things within the same four walls. And so amazing opportunity. But at some point, and it's not true of everyone, but at some point you want to sink your teeth into a brand or a category and go deep on it. And then there is the job security part of it, where it just kind of calms down that if you're working in-house, this is where I'm working, this is what I'm doing, and you feel a sense of comfort with that. But I think the most important thing is really, for myself and others that have made that transition, it's about discovering what you really love and what you really want to sink your teeth into and really get your head around. It's a category or a particular brand, and going in-house allows you to do that. And then when you make that transition, you realize, wow, there's so much more to this marketing pie than when I was studying marketing. I knew there were different pieces to that marketing pie, but I didn't really experience them. When you get in-house, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Finance, administration, manufacturing, distribution, sales, marketing, all the pieces. And obviously, research and development, innovation, all those things, you're suddenly exposed to all that. It's exciting, and you're like, oh, now. And so I think you become a better marketer. I think agencies are very smart, but they're good at that storytelling. They're good at having sort of like a different perspective. And that's great because they're not just wrapped up into one thing. They bring fresh thinking because they're not in-house. But as a marketing strategist or account manager or even a creative person, at some point you might get that I want to go deep. And when you go into the brand, on the brand side, you get to go deep, and it's just the amount of access you have to why you're doing things is far and away more than you'll ever have at an agency. But they're two different things, and it's not for everybody. I wouldn't recommend it for everyone because I think there are other sides to working in a larger organization. There's budget management. There's all these things you didn't really deal with, as an agency person. But the rewards are tremendous if you really love that category or love that brand.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, that ability to go deep and truly understand the business, the brand, the people in a way that I'm sure it's hard when you're the agency. And my interpretations of agencies is well dated because I feel like I still think about Mad Men, which is one of my all-time favorite series I've ever watched. And it probably wasn't good for my bourbon intake.
Yeah.
But that's my vision of it. And the one thing I'm curious, I don't know if there's a standard or what's the average lifespan of a client to an agency. Is there kind of that standard, or how would you define? Because you said something at the very beginning, Christian, you said job security, right? And so that means to me, there's a turnover. And let's just use the outdoor industry and subjective. I'd like to know subjectively from you, what do you think the average lifespan is in our industry of an agency with a brand?
It really does vary. You'll see long-term relationships. And I've seen them where it goes on forever. Generally, that you find that a lot in the CPG world, where there's this long-standing Procter & Gamble is with such and such agency forever. And there's been migration back and forth with team members back and forth. But I feel like within the outdoor industry, our industry, it feels like it's just like kind of 3 to 4 year sort of, it takes a year or two to kind of get your feet on the ground and really have an impact and go through a couple of selling seasons and these kinds of things. So it feels like it's around that 3 to 4 year period where people start looking around and say, oh, is this working or not? So, but I do think it varies. I think it also varies upon the size of the spending, the media budget, all these things. Can you afford to move around? Because it's expensive for a brand to change agencies. It takes human capital and it takes actual capital to make those transitions. So it's hard to do, but it feels like that's kind of the average. But again, it really does vary. But I think the outdoor industry seems to turn over a lot more than what I've seen in CPG, automotive, bigger fashion. The big brands that I've worked on in the fashion world, Levi's and Gap and the like, there was long-standing relationships. And some of that comes from the deepness of the tactical nature of those relationships when it comes to media and creative and all the parts that are associated with it. Hard to unwind that. So it takes a while for it to move on, and it takes a long time for that thing to finally start clicking. So there's a big investment there on those bigger brands. But the smaller outdoor brands, you can flip them and change them a lot easier. So I think you kind of see that every 3 to 4 years.
Are these agencies that turn over 3 to 4 years, are these endemic to the outdoor and sporting goods industry? I guess my question is this: in the outdoor industry, do more brands use endemic agencies, or do they use well-known, bigger, larger New York office, LA office type agencies?
Yeah, endemic for the most part, and I think that's a good thing. And I also think it's a bit of an area of opportunity as well, because that fresh perspective for an agency that's not endemic could work really well. The flip side of that is like my conversation I mentioned earlier with that large sports nutrition brand. They may never get the culture, and the outdoor industry and its culture are specific, but it's true of automotive and true of fashion as well. But really without the passion and the people, it's hard to get it. If you're not an outdoor person, an athlete, or somehow like an adventurer or a traveler, you may never get it. And so I think it's a bit of a challenge if you're a New York fashion boutique in Manhattan and you're trying to understand what a small, in your world, outdoor brand is doing and what their community is up to and what drives that community. I think it's a big lift. They can hire people in to do that, but there might always be this bit of this tension, and they may cross lines that just don't make sense. So I think it's a difficult ask, but I think there's an upside to it because I've seen I also have experience where we always go with the endemic. You kind of get the same thing over and over again. There really isn't a breaking out of that mold. And I think in today's world, especially when inclusivity and DE&I is so important, that I think going outside the norm, outside endemic also could help in that area as well. But it's a challenge because the culture is so strong and so important. And there's such a big heart in our industry that if you don't get it, you don't get it. And it's hard and it takes time and it's a lot of energy for the brand to educate an agency on that. And, they don't always get it. So I think it's risky, but the reward could be there if you went outside the endemics.
What about when a brand who has been using agencies, whether it's endemic or non-endemic, is there a point where a brand says, enough, we're bringing it all in-house? Does that happen?
Yeah, it happens. And I'm in favor of that in a lot of ways because of what I just mentioned about the culture and the fast turn nature. If you're doing go-to-market strategies, things like that, it's just sometimes it's better. I've had experiences where the agency, if it's a medium-sized agency, if you're an outdoor brand, you're probably one of their smaller clients. And how they operate, their financial model is your account manager, your chief strategist is going to have 5 or 6 clients, maybe 3 to 5 clients. You're going to get only a certain amount of their time on their calendar. And so if you have quick turnaround, it's difficult. And so you're always kind of waiting. And so there is a push to do that. And I think it's a great model because of the culture, the turnaround, the size of the work that we're doing, the budgets that we work with don't require, outside creative help. Media buying, different because of that expertise. I always recommend using a digital strategist. I think that's a different thing. But when it comes to content creation, storytelling, briefing, all those things, it can be done in-house. Design, web, all that stuff, social media, all that stuff is, moves and it goes so quickly that in-house, I believe, is the way to go when you're a small to medium-sized outdoor brand because you can really control it and you always know you're on point when it comes to, brand personality, brand heart, purpose work, all that stuff is much easier. It's a much better flow.
What's the structure look like if a brand is going to say, all right, we're bringing it all in-house? What are the functional areas of people that you got to bring in that gets your own internal agency start ready to go?
Yeah. I think the foundational piece that I experienced is design. I think whether it's digital design and possibly packaging design, I think it starts there. When it comes to copywriting, I think that my experience is that wasn't an everyday need. And a lot of great brand strategists and marketers in-house can also write, a fair amount of copy, or at least brief copy. So I believe it starts with design. So you have your social media content, you have your video content, you have your website content, and you can turn that and update that and keep that rolling. So I think it starts there. Doesn't have to have a creative director level in the beginning. You can have that being managed by a really astute, smart, experienced, marketing manager or marketing director. They're very good. I was a creative director in a lot of ways in a lot of these roles, as well as a marketing director. You kind of play that role. So I think you can start there. Eventually, if you really begin to build out your portfolio of content, the creative director level can be important because they can own that. They can own that look and feel. So then managers can kind of go off and do the other thing they need to do. But for me, it starts with design. I think technology, especially with e-commerce and our web experiences and DTC are so important that technologist programming, some of that kind of those back end functions in-house would also be that second kind of pillar when you're starting out. And then as you grow, then you start to bring in those more senior folks. But in the beginning, I believe a strong marketing director, marketing manager, along with those functional, back end design, digital design, you're in a good place in terms of starting out building an in-house, function.
that doesn't seem undoable, right? Bringing on a digital designer and did you say a front end or back end developer? Which is first?
I would say front end because the back end probably doesn't come up as much.
Okay.
It's nice to have, but I would say front end developer along with with design capabilities. That back end will come when you start to become more, when you're moving and you're doing more things, the back end, but you could probably outsource that. It really just kind of depends on how big your DTC business is for you and how important your web experience is for the brand at that time, how much focus and how many revisions and how many updates do you actually do, and what kind of content you're creating. But I would start there. And then again, as you grow, eventually you bring in more of those functions. And then that senior creative leadership comes sort of after you've established yourself and you're spending amount of time and resource on that level of content.
That investment to me seems very doable for even a small organization to really embed these individuals to understand all those parts we talked about earlier of really what drives the brand. What does the heart look like? What's the oxygen level? Man, I feel like I could talk about the organizational side of this forever.
Yeah. Well, and if I can add also the other benefit, if someone's thinking about that, the other part of that investment where you can amortize that is in-house stuff. The people and culture department, they all, there's all kinds of things that in-house, development and design can do for that organization as well. It's not all externally focused. There is a lot. So I think that investment makes sense when you get to that point. That's where it starts. Because man, if you could turn around, like even just like the profiles for the company on places like LinkedIn and all these other, there's things that are valuable to the culture and valuable, for the brand to grow. That if you're always outsourcing those things or having it kind of done ad hoc in-house by somebody who kind of knows a little bit about it. So you can amortize that investment, that headcount investment across other departments as well. And so I think to your point, it's a pretty reasonable investment in the beginning. It gets a little more important and a little bit more deliberate when you start to bring in creative director level. Then you have to really think about, okay, because again, a really experienced, marketing director, marketing manager, they have that in their heads in terms of the look and feel, what it's supposed to, the emotion it's supposed to, communicate. So they can play that role for quite some time.
Yeah, that's a really good point about not only does this internal team then handle brand and content for the brand, you're right. There's other parts of the business that you can amortize it out. I mean, your employer brand, right? Like you said, whether it's your LinkedIn page or it's your career site or it's your culture, your mission, vision, and values page on your website, like bring all that together. So it's not just if you have a couple launches a year or if you're in the apparel business, the seasonal launches in this calendar, there's other times that they can be applied. Their skill sets can be applied into building other parts of the brand, which are essentially lifting it all up.
Yeah, there's onboarding documents. You imagine an amazing onboarding document or brand introduction to candidates, what that would do for people and culture, for the recruitment process. How amazing would that be if you have a smart designer that knows the brand, does the same thing. You're selling the company to candidates. I mean, that's incredible. Also, sales teams, sell index to retailers, all those presentations. Especially in the specialty and in our industry, there's a lot of work and a lot of opportunity to improve that process. And if you're using your in-house designers to do that, or even if it's your agency, if you're still in that model, it can really amplify those presentations as well.
I'm laughing because that's a big piece of our process that we run in searches is developing the assets of the position profile, because what we get from our clients, a job description, which is basically company, must-haves, nice-to-haves, qualifications. But what we do is we actually create that into the feel of the brand, the actual history of the brand. And we use graphics and images from the social feeds, from their own website. And we build something that actually has a branded feel versus 99.9% of every job opportunity that is posted out there is literally text on a page. And it's going to say things like things that aren't even relevant. Need to lift 50 pounds. Well, some jobs that is relevant, but great communicator. I don't think I've ever worked on a search where the person doesn't have to be
that wasn't important.
That wasn't important.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. All right. So I'm going to switch gears here just a little bit because I am so interested in learning a little bit more about your background, because you have two passports. You've got a U.S. passport and an Italian passport, which I think being a dual citizen, a dual passport holder is like one of those life accomplishments. I hope to have one of those someday. But you're a certified Neapolitan pizza chef. And I have two questions to kind of get into this. Is first, what defines a Neapolitan pizza? And then secondly, Christian, how did you get certified?
Okay. It is true. I am a certified Neapolitan pizza chef, something they call pizza ulo. And what makes in Italy, like in other strong food cultures, certain areas of the culinary world are protected and making sure they hold on to their heritage. And in Italy, pizza is one of them. Gelato is another one of them, where there is a certain, if you're going to claim to make and take advantage of the opportunity, the communications around a genuine Neapolitan pizza, there are certain practices and ingredients that you must use to adhere to that. And if you want to have that certification on your window in your restaurant or just claim it as a chef, you have to get certified and continue and remain, certified and get recertified. And what's involved there is really, it's the type of oven that you use, wood burning oven at a certain degree, 700 above. It's the kind of flour that you use, milled to a certain texture, the type of cheese that you use, the type of ingredient, everything you do for that pizza meets a certain standard that has been established and been around forever. And really, and it kind of orbits around Naples in that part of Italy. That's where I was born. That's where I got certified. And so it's all about that. And it's actually quite simple when you learn it. But sticking to those principles and those practices allows you to claim to be making a genuine Neapolitan pizza.
Okay. So just to recap, so you got these different fundamental aspects of wood burning oven, 700 degrees or above. This was an interesting one, the flour and the mill size. So I think about coffee. If I'm doing a pour over, here's my grind size. If I'm doing a espresso, here's my different grind sizes, different ways I'm going to make the coffee. So knowing you got these different elements, what are the characteristics of the Neapolitan pizza? Like hands down, here's what they are.
Well, essentially it's a thinner crust pizza, usually, of a single size, for an individual order to be shared, a light amount of ingredients. The dough is kind of crispy and burnt on the outside, airy on the inside. It cooks very quickly in the oven. And it's like the classic is the margherita, which is, buffalo mozzarella, tomatoes, fresh basil, maybe some garlic and olive oil. That's it. And it's really about the quality of the ingredients, not the quantity of ingredients. Whereas you see some of the American pizzas, a lot of it's the quantity, like meat lovers, all these things, pile it all on there. This is really about the quality of those ingredients. So it's that crispy crust. It's a light amount of ingredients. It's natural ingredients, and it cooks very quickly. It's the dough and the oven that really, because the ingredients you can make and or buy, and that's great. But you have to make that dough in a certain way and have it cook in a certain way to really sort of frame what the experience will be like for that pizza. Cause that crispiness, a little bit of burnt bubbles, imperfected, it's like imperfect, sort of oval shape. And it's just very natural looking and cooks in just a couple of minutes in that oven. And that's it. And then you have a genuine pie.
Okay. Now, for those who are listening, to kind of help visually understand what the Neapolitan pizza looks like once it's finished, we've got a certain buffalo mozzarella. Tell me about the tomato sauce. Is this a cooked tomato sauce? Is it a raw? How do you make the tomato sauce?
There are different recipes with the tomato sauce, but it can be fresh tomatoes. It can be a paste. It can be, you can use fresh tomatoes, or you can use a cooked sauce with spices and made with fresh tomatoes and all that. So there's some variations in there, but it's really about the tomatoes, the buffalo mozzarella, and the fresh basil for that margherita pizza.
I've gotten more interested in pizzas recently. Do you know who Dave Portney is, who does the One Bite pizza reviews?
Yes, I know the One Bite pizza review.
So I've started to watch them in my socials, and he goes out, basically Dave goes into a pizza place, whatever city he's in. So he's just got done doing Chicago, and Chicago has a unique type of pizza. Their pizza, they've got a few types. They've got a pub pizza, which is like a cracker crust, and then they've got the deep dish. I'm more interested in the pub pizzas, the more thin ones, but he goes in, comes out the pizza box, does it on camera, takes one bite, and he gives it a rating. And that ratings really can help that pizza place. They can also, I don't want to say hurt it, but maybe they're saving people from buying pizza that's subpar. he's got these different types of pizzas around the US. And so I think of, here's the pizzas I want to try. I want to try a New Haven pizza. I want to try a Detroit style pizza. So knowing your background in being a certified Neapolitan pizza chef, what are other styles of pizza that you've had around the US that you like also?
Oh, good question. I have been labeled as a pizza elitist, so I can be a little tough on pizzas, but I do have the ability to sort of open up my mind and say, okay, this is the experience. It's not a Neapolitan pizza. And so don't, expect it to be one. I love the New York slice. The New York slice is amazing. I think that's a terrific pizza experience for what it is, just the whole atmosphere of it. And I don't know how they do it. I don't know. And my family, when I grew up we had a pizzeria growing up and I worked in that kitchen. We try to do slices and I don't know how they do it. I don't know what it is that's going on there. But it must be in the water in New York. But that New York Manhattan slice is one of my favorite, probably my second favorite style of pizza.
Yeah. I hear the same thing. It's in the water, but then I think of what's in the pipes and I'm like, do we want to drink that water? But pizza's different.
I think there's also something to the sort of aging that happens. They make the pie, they slice, they put it up into the lights. And age is true. It's not fresh, but that's part of it. That's what it's about. That's kind of the experience, And so I think that there's something about they have just perfected. And the idea that you can walk onto almost any street corner in Manhattan and get that experience. There's some of the better ones, but yeah, I think that is probably my second favorite. Is that slice.
Cool. Christian, you're a curious guy. Tell me something you've learned in the past 3 months.
Something I've learned in the past 3 months. Well, it's a really good question. I think the world has been moving so fast that if we don't pay attention to everything that's happening in the world, in our personal lives and also in our professional lives, we may stumble or we may not be as empathetic as we want to be. I think you have to do your homework on not only your industry, but also in the world. That all that stuff, we're all one planet. And so all of it is sort of a melting pot of information and inspirations and empathies that we need to consider in everything that we're doing in our personal lives as well as our professional lives. And I think it's never been more true than it is today. I kind of maybe always known it, but I don't think it's ever been more important than it is right now, because it just seems like you wake up in the morning and the world is a different place. And you just have to do more homework now than you ever had to in the past, I believe, just on what's going. You can't have your head in the sand and just expect to go day to day and be okay. You might survive, but you won't thrive. So I just feel like that's something I've learned. We have to really make sure that we're paying attention to everything in the world.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's a good thing to have learned, because in the past, we could rely on, here's where we get our information. And that was the information. Things are changing so fast. There's so much going on that if you just go on what you hear at the corner of your eye, you may be so off the mark. You may hurt someone with your statement or your feeling because you haven't done your homework. And that's, I hope the proliferation of these independent journalists continues, because it's very interesting to see that shift that's happening right now. And that's where we get our content. And it's never been more prevalent over the last 3.5 years now.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the thing I would say to teams and folks that I work with is that when you go home at night and you're watching filmed content or you're reading things or you're doing things, that's your homework. It's not taking your work home from the office and doing that. It's really just paying attention and trying to get a deep understanding of what's happening. That's homework for the office life. So you come in the next day, you might just have something interesting to dialogue with your mates about, but you also might have something that could inform the work that you're doing as a brand or as a company or as a team. And so I feel like that's kind of the new homework, is really pay attention to what's going on. And it's hard because there is a lot of information. It's what's real and what isn't is also a challenge. But I just feel like because you can wake up again and have things be so different any day of the week, we have to be paying attention. We can't just go home from the office and then that's it and shut it down and then just show up and clock in and here I am. Get your brain on it. I just don't think that really works in the long term anymore.
Yeah, I've gone through that. I wanted to shut it all out. And I did. I went on a pure, complete mainstream media. I called it a detox, but I've stopped, like literally stopped. And that's where I've found more journalists in independent sources of information. But tell me this, Christian, right now, what are you most excited about?
On the professional side, what I'm most excited about is what I think is the most important thing that brands, all categories, and we're seeing it, need to pay attention to for the future state. And that's around sustainability, around sustainable business practices. Because I feel like we need to make sure as brands that we're not asking consumers to do more than we're willing to do as brands. We're putting the onus on them to recycle and do all these things. Are we willing to also meet them halfway? And so I think it's really important, not only with the products that you're making in terms of their recycled materials or recyclability, but it's your business practices in-house, your administration, your manufacturing, your R&D, marketing, live events, the amount of things and landfill that's created from live events. What are we doing there? How everything that all of our functions. So I feel like that is something that I'm really excited that's becoming important. And consumers, younger consumers, are demanding that of brands, that we're doing our part. I think we could always, in the past, it just kind of felt like we could just kind of greenwash it, and we can no longer do that. So I'm excited about that challenge, and that brands are really embracing it and really trying to do that and really trying to make that happen. It is a big challenge because we're talking about it holistically, all the departments, how much a sales team travels, what's the carbon footprint there? What kind of stuff do you give away at events? What kind of swag you making? What are your R&D practices? What are all those things that you're doing as an organization that are also supporting what you're asking consumers to think about and do?
That gets me excited too. I appreciate how you shared that, Christian. All right. So as we're wrapping up now, I have one last question for you. And I want to ask you this for everyone who has made it to the end with us, who is listening to this right now. And tell me this, of all the books that you've read, what book have you recommended to people or individuals that you care about? What book have you recommended more than any other book?
Oh, interesting question. I think for me, it's not a book. I think it's printed magazines.
Okay.
It's things like Adventure Journal, Like the Wind, which is a running publication that's produced out of the UK. It's Monocle magazine. These magazines that are printed, like they used to be printed, the journalism, the storytelling, the texture, the thought that goes into when you're actually reading. I think it's much more thoughtful experience for the reader. I think you get more out of it than you do through the digital space. And so that's what I recommend the most to folks. If they're looking for something, bring a stack of magazines onto an airplane, bring a stack of magazines to the beach, to your beach vacation, or to wherever you're going to be. That's what I find myself recommending most, because there are so many magazines out there that have survived, printed magazines survived, and they're really focusing on the content and the storytelling and the journalism, because they have to, and they're smaller and they're more thoughtful, and it's, there's not a lot of advertising, and it's like a different model, more of a subscription model, less advertising, more small and just kind of boutique. That's what I find most useful, and I feel like I'm mentioning to folks when it comes to this subject is, printed magazines. And there's a lot of them out there that they're still out there. They're thriving, these little publications.
Okay, that's awesome. Tell the listeners right now the 3 titles of those magazines, because you obviously are someone who values storytelling, and some magazines are, they're thick, full of ads. Some of them are full of stories. So give us the list.
The 3 that are on my mind is Adventure Journal, Like the Wind, which is a magazine about not how to run, but why you run, which is an important distinction. And they do some brand partnerships with Like the Wind, but it's content focused partnerships. It really is thoughtful, just informative kind of journalism along with brands. And then Monocle magazine is a magazine that's been around for a while. It's also out of the UK. It's more of a design kind of global business thought leader type of thing. It's really well done because it just kind of gives you a perspective. I think people in the US should read it because it gives you a global perspective on what's going on in a lot of industries, luxury, fashion, automotive, sports, all the things. It's printed. They do a lot of, they like to do these special editions of the magazine, little sort of, if you're subscribed, you get these little kind of little bonus magazines here and there. So they do a nice job. So those are the 3 that I frequently read, along with, National Geographic still comes to my doorstep, and that's been coming to my doorstep since I was 18 years old. So that's always a winner. But they're also part of now, of course, a bigger thing. But those other three are the ones that I would definitely recommend.
Great recommendations. All right. So as I wrap this up, I've got a couple thoughts for everyone who's listening right now. And first thought is, if you have not subscribed to the channel, it would mean the world to me if you would. It'll help the algorithm and get this quality content out to more people. And right now, more than ever, it is so important that you're kind to everyone that you interact with. But what's even more important than that is be kinder to yourself. And Christian, thank you so much for joining me today.